Or did you manage to get done?
Luckily, I mean, I don't know. It was. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We are a few family and friends gathered here today, but we all know that Patrick's connections were global. So welcome to all who are here and are able to watch on the live stream. Today we celebrate Patrick Conrad Chansam. To some, Pat, Dad, Papa, Uncle Pat, Moos, Mr. Chan, O Patty, Pizza. Patrick was Carol's partner, father, and grandfather to our large and extended and blended families. Brother, cousin, mentor, community activist, and comrade. Patrick was head of our family, a role model, a father figure, and a support to us all. A hard act to follow. He was born in Grahamstown in 1943. Patrick lived in Johannesburg and Cape Town. He worked in various jobs, last supporting and developing cooperatives. Patrick never stopped believing in a world where human life and human endeavor should be valued equally. His political and community involvement was broad and diverse, from his armchair Marxist group to the bread baking co-op in rural Eastern Cape, and locally the soup kitchen ladies of Overcome Heights. We thank all the well-wishers who have sent messages from across the globe. Today I'm joined by Tama, Amos, Terry, and Butch, who have contributions to make. First up, we will have Tama, Carol's daughter, who will say a poem on behalf of Carol, Pat's life partner.
Thank you, Grant. My mum, Carol, and Patrick had a very special relationship, very close, and a relationship that spanned a good 25 years. This poem is something we chose with Carol, which captures some of their closeness and some of the tremendous hole that he leaves in all of our lives, but most particularly my mom's. Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone, prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone, silence the pianos, and with muffled drum, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. Let aeroplanes circle, moaning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message, he is dead. Put crepe bows around the white necks of the public doves. Let the traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest. My noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out every one. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can come to any good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tama. That was moving. Okay, now we will have Terry Chansam. And I had forgotten to mention that after Wayne, my brother Butch, we'll have my dad's lifelong friend and comrade, Comrade Marcus Solomons. So now we will have up Terry.
Thank you, Grant. Hello, everybody. My name is Terence. That son. What can I say? I haven't been. I'd like to actually read a message from my sister, my elder sister. Unfortunately, can't be here at the moment. She's in Australia, and she sent me this message. I'd really like to read it out to you. She says, sorry. She says, Patrick would have been 78 this October. Born in 1943, he was the first child to survive the scarlet fever and smallpox of the 1940s. Beloved, treasured by his parents and grandfather, who called him "Oh boy." Patrick learned to cook with the old man, learning the Chinese recipes that he would cook for the family for many years. Chow mein was his signature dish. We all remember the sheets of dough hanging over makeshift lines in the kitchen, the rolling and rolling of the dough through the noodle machine, the chopping of the vegetables, the sizzle of the meat, garlic and soy sauce. In later years, he and Carol's brunches were feasts. Both here in Cape Town and back in Yeovil in Joburg, he loved the get-together. Patrick was 15 when his father died, and he became the head of the family, eldest of 6 siblings, and later a father himself. But really, Patrick was a father, grandfather, and dad to many, many more. He was like a brooding hen, sometimes worrying over his chicks. This included his younger siblings and many in our extended family. Patrick's vitality was legendary as a younger man. It matured as he got older. Not so his dad's humor. He could be witty, but his jokes were often flow. Although he would crack up laughing at his own jokes. Just recently, he sent this, "Wie's die baas Mati, wat die vroumense vra by die winkels." Nobody gets that. Only he did. He was intensely interested in the world, in ideas and ideologies. He was involved in a wide variety of groups and always urging and encouraging all of us to become engaged with the world, to read, learn, and think, criticize, analyze. He always loved to talk about life, gardening, gossip, and politics. Woe betide if you got caught in one of his lectures and hadn't done the reading that he sent you. He was widely read. He embraced the internet and its global reach. He was and is an internationalist. Like everyone, Patrick was a complex being. He too faced challenges and disappointments. But he was unflinching in his duties, whether the task was great or small. He took on. Believing, with all honesty, sometimes against all odds, that he would overcome difficulties, score a little victory against the bastards that rule the world. He and Carol lived with humility, simple tastes, and gratefulness for being alive. Patrick always looked me in the eye and taught me to look back unswervingly at him and at life. In later years, he became more my friend, a comrade, and always a father. Once I asked him about afterlife, and his reply was, "You are no more or less than a plant, an organism. You live, you die, you feed the new life that grows. Think of your death as benefiting what comes after you." His socialist ideology permeated his whole life. His belief in justice, in compassion, in revolution, in fairness, never diminished. but his dreams and goals changed over the years just as he did, teaching me as all the value of love, of a simple beach walk, getting together for meals, and showing it is possible to grow as a person, learn new ways, develop, be happy amidst your cares and commitments. Patrick was a passionate man who felt the world's injustice, deeply, deeply loved, and one of his first love was music, jazz in particular. The other deep love was Carol. I treasure the time I spent with you both, and that will ease my grief and loss. This is my sister. Okay. I can't add much to that, except to say that my father was a man who held up a mountain. And not only of our family, but he extended his family to friends and comrades and everybody, to plants. Plants were his babies, you know. If you could understand that, you could understand the friendship that you got from him, you know. His philosophy wasn't really violent. So people say he was a communist or whatever, revolutionary, but he wasn't. He was a gentle soul. He was compassionate. He was loving. Most of all, his humanity came through. And he showed people how to be human again, how to live and love and laugh as humans together without prejudice, without any kind of strings holding their thoughts. That was my dad. I just want to end by saying that I'd like to thank everybody who helped us in this effort to commemorate my dad's life. It is really heartfelt. It is really heartfelt and much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, now we will have a tribute by Amos Khan, Carol's son, and a brother to all of us.
I've titled this tribute "A Most Wonderful Man" because to me that captures the essence of Patrick. That's not to say he wasn't grumpy at times or strong-willed and intolerant of fools, but it captures his generosity of spirit and his patience, his tenderness and his caring, his desire and passion to make a difference, and his dedication to becoming the best person he could be. For such a quiet and unassuming man, Patrick has touched the life of so many people. The outpouring of grief of remembrance over the last week has been overwhelming. He built pockets of deep connection with people in a way that I've never seen. Not one to boast, or to tell wild stories of his achievements, or to hold forth. Patrick always had time to connect with you exactly where you were, to share ideas and bond over the everyday magic of life. He also had strong political and social views. I remember many discussions about how everything would be better if we just removed money from the equation. I never found out what we would replace it with, but what struck me about these debates is that Patrick remained open to alternative viewpoints and never held it against me that our opinions were so different. He was stable and well considered, but not stuck in his ways. And he remains the gentlest, communist, anarchist, revolutionary that the world has ever seen, because above all, he was a humanist. He was unassuming and generous and patient, but these characteristics didn't appear magically in him. They were the product of intention and hard work. I was going through some some of his papers at my mom's house a few days ago, and I came across a message he'd written to a relative. And in that, he mentioned the relief of finding out that the surgery he just had been successful, saying that now at least he knew he had 10 more years to achieve the character growth he'd been promising himself his entire life. Patrick's been part of my family for so long that I can't imagine him not being here anymore. My wife Angela told me the first time I invited her to my house for a visit, Patrick made her a Chinese stir-fry. And I thought that's the perfect image. He's always there, always present, always ready to make a meal, to listen, to make an insightful comment, or to laugh with delight at a foolish joke. More than that, though, is the dedication and love he showed to Carol. She was the love of his life, and he the love of hers. As a family, we're so happy that they found each other, and are so grateful for everything that Patrick's done for Carol over the years. So goodbye, Patrick, you most wonderful man. You'll never be forgotten.
Thank you, Amos. That was very touching. Now I'd like to call up my brother Wayne, or as we know him, Butch. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and hi to those people who know me. I wrote a long-ass speech, and I can't really say the things that, or repeat the things that people have said. I mean, the depth and honesty which was displayed here, it was really moving. All I can say is that I pay tribute to my dad and respect the bridges that he has built, and the trust and confidence and integrity he has engendered, and the bridges he has built, where some of us thought it was impossible to go, and we can only wish to emulate his intentions and aims and his achievements. And I want to say thank you for having been part of it, and for having known all of you.
Thank you, Butch. Appreciate that. And now we'll have a few words from my dad's friend from his hometown, Grahamstown, and comrade in the struggle, Mr. Marcus Solomons.
A sad day indeed, but also an occasion to celebrate. Carol, Wayne, Terry, Tanya, Grant, all your families, comrades and friends. I bring condolences from my family, many comrades. I just got a call from Australia, but I'll come back to that. And then, of course, from the Children's Resource Center, where Patrick has been working for many years now, children. It's a great loss, but as I said, I think it's also time to celebrate a wonderful life. What I want to bring today is the life beyond Patrick as an activist. I was born in Grahamstown in 1939. A few years later, Patrick was born. We grew up in the same town. And a few doors from where I was born, Marie's first wife saw the day of light. A light of day, sorry. I've known him ever since then. There was a short break, So I've known him, I've known his mother, Aunt Tan, and many may not know his father was Francis Chan. We never called him Sam Chan, it was always Francis Chan. Aunt Tan. And what I really want to bring is that we had a life before we became activists. People have agency. Where I come from, Grahamstown was full of it. In fact, just recently we launched a book about rugby in Grahamstown. And Grant, your grandfather, appears in many of the photos, Charlie Miles. So life for us started in Grahamstown. Patrick became a socialist when he was in his 20s, I think early 30s, activist. But that humanity that always shone through him comes from Grahamstown, community. And of course, later in life, people like Carol and others. People always, and I've seen all the messages, it's always about how kind he was to Carol. Very few mention that what Carol did to Patrick. Very strange always. They used to come to the resource center. Carol was always there, of course. She used to sit in, of course. It wasn't always able for her, but she was there. And one of the women there, Josie, she said, you know, Carol notices everything, except, of course, Carol had a life of her own. She an activist in her own right. So she brought much to Patrick's life. And I know, because we used to discuss a lot. In fact, the last time we had a discussion, he was going to speak at my funeral. This love of music, by the way, I don't know if you know, Francis Chan was a great saxophone, what's it called? Saxophonist, this person who plays the saxophone, I can't pronounce the bloody word. Now, langarm music in Grahamstown was the thing. In Francis China, there was a small Chinese community of which Francis was part of. But the funny thing is about, he's the Chinaman, he speel langarm. Do you know what I mean? Here's this Chinaman, he's playing langarm. Now, some of you may know Bobby Hendricks. Who've heard Bobby Hendricks? The great langarm band in Cape Town. I first heard Bobby Hendricks from Francis Chan in Grahamstown when I was a little boy. Rugby. And one of his great friends was Andrew Mentor. Andrew and I grew up together in the same house. I left Grahamstown in 1957 to come to Cape Town to school. And that was the years missing in my life with Patrick. Many years later, when I was released from prison, we ran into each other again. We chatted and said, man, wie jy getrou? Who did you get married? He said, Mari. You said, Mari Miles? Yes, I said, I was sweet on Mari. And you get married to her. But of course, my sweetness when I was 5. And the right gesê, hey, jy, bly weg van Mari af, because this little boy was always in the street there. So, and then we became members of various socialist groupings. Patrick became involved in the cooperatives. The director of the National Association of Cooperatives, who worked together at URDEP. So my point I want to make is that Patrick wasn't parachuted in our communities as a socialist. He had deep roots in communities that had deep humanity. And that's one of the things he said about Carol. He said, man, I've got this new person in my life. You know, she enriched it. Now, Francis Chan, when he played long arm, but some of the music we got came from those musical types, whatever. Just this morning, just as before I left actually, a chap called Teddy Calvert called me from Australia, a great friend of Tyron. Tyron is your uncle. And he said, because what Patrick and I were discussing, we want to write the history of Grahamstown, or at least initiate a project that would be the history of Grahamstown, to capture some of these things. And when I asked Pat, I said, Pat, I know you're very great at cooperatives now. The Children's Resource Center, we were started 40 years ago out of community struggles, work with children. And Patrick, without hesitation, said, of course. And he became the administrator of our co-op. And him and Carol would come to our meetings. And of course, we would go to their house, this beautiful garden. And when I say Patrick was a socialist, he's not only part of a socialist network here, but also internationally. In fact, just recently, somebody asked me to also just speak about Pat and a few other people because they're linking up internationally. But he lived these socialist values because he came with a lot of that from his communities. I really want to emphasize that. Carol and all of you, you come from our parents, our partners. And that is what Patrick always do. Just love about the resource center, the children, and the women who work with the children. In fact, the photo where he sits in the car with Carol next, I sent that to the net, to the, what do they call this thing? This chat box you have. What's up there? Yeah. So this WhatsApp. So that it was him and Carol a few days ago. They went to the resort, to one of the ladies in Mitchell's Plain. And there they were sitting, and a few days later, she couldn't believe it, that Pat is gone. You know. But I said, but Carol still said, don't worry. You know. So that it's that what he loved about the resource, the children. And all his own grandchildren and his children. So that humanity he brought was part of his lived socialism. And I think that's what's missing in many. We preach, but we don't practice. And his big disappointment, of course, like with all of us, that the struggle had to continue because the major struggle just threw up so many unwanted things. The struggle continues as far as he was concerned. The cooperatives, but more the garden. Get the most beautiful garden. You know, today it's a fashionable, everybody's environment. What do they do? Also, but Patrick started with the garden. The most beautiful garden. Him and Carol. I'm sorry, Carol, I just again say Patrick. In the meantime, it's your two, the garden of the two of you. The food you cooked when we got there, we got all this fresh food. And of course, sometimes a plant that he gave on some of you, sometimes just took. So it's all that. And this guy from Australia this morning, he said, I must please convey his condolences to you, Carol. I don't know if you know Terry Calvert. And he knows he'll contact you, but he remembers because Terry married Lucy. Is that? So it's a hele familie ding. And I think that's what's so lacking today. And our work with children is about that. And Patrick, without any hesitation, joined that. And he ran up. In fact, we just chatted last night, how are we going to replace this most efficient administrator? I worked with Pat in URDEP, a national urban rural development project, just started by some of us. He worked in all sorts of areas. But the most important, like somebody mentioned already, whether it was big or small, he did it with great efficiency. I could go on and on. I just want to consult my notes because I'm getting a rugby out. Yes. Oh, yes, the one or two other things. Again, Carol. Patrick, you were your soulmates. He used to call you my soulmate in your absence. And truly she was. But I also like to believe so was his other relationships. I knew Mari well. Wonderful mother you had. And many comrades across the country would like me to convey their condolences, but also to join us in celebrating this. Internationalist, what does that actually mean? It means you love the world, the environment. I see a young man there with a dinosaur. Everybody says now we must love dinosaurs. Why? Because we come from there. We're part of nature. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, thank you very much. To have invited me, to Carol and the family for inviting me. He was a wonderful comrade, and we had so much to share because we could, in fact, it was not a comradeship. It was more than that. In a sense, also a soulmate, because when we chatted about Grahamstown, it was about small things, Hey, do you remember that day? So-and-so happened. In fact, Patrick got up to nonsense with Andrew, he's my cousin of mine. They wanted to start a new rugby club. And the adult said, but I heard that afterwards. Called him to a meeting, said, what do you think you are? You want to start another rugby club here? Stay where you are, because that's where your family belongs. So it was all that sort of stuff. And Anten, of course, Francis Chan, sisters. So thank you very much. And let us take inspiration from Patrick's life. He lived what he believed and what he had hoped would one day become our new South Africa. And all his life he struggled, especially when he became a converted socialist, to become this new person. And it's not about being red or revolutionary. In fact, it is. But to be red or revolution means to love people, make your garden. Love people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Marcus, for those nice words. Okay, now I will say a couple of messages of tribute from Patrick's siblings, his last surviving brother and two sisters, as well as my two sisters that are overseas and can't make it, and my cousin. I will start with his sister, Loretta, who unfortunately couldn't make it today as she is wheelchair bound and cannot come. So on behalf of Loretta, this is her message. He was the eldest of an unruly group of siblings who challenged his position on every issue, but who ruled with a steady sense of conviction of his leadership and refusal to relinquish his role as leader of the tribe. His interests covered many disciplines, and his missives on interesting literary content will leave a gaping hole. He was a Renaissance man who embraced art, gardening, music, literature, and he was a relentless activist against injustice and oppression. He was also an accomplished chef, but modesty prevented him from ever seeing himself in this light. He had a heart that yearned to save the world from cruelty and brutality, and an inability to accept a compliment. He had an impish sense of humor and a huge appetite for life. The world is a much darker place without him. Love, Loretta. Okay, now I'm going to do one from his brother who's in Johannesburg and also, due to circumstances, couldn't make it. This one is from Tyrone. This is a sad farewell that is ripped from me for my dear brother Patrick. It is a parting that is so sudden that most of us are still climbing off the ropes and trying to stagger back to life. I extend my love and sympathy to Carol, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, brother and sisters, friends, colleagues, and all whose hearts he captured during his life. He will forever live in the hearts he left behind. Patrick loved humanity, and even plants were his brothers and sisters. We lost our father when Patrick was a young man, and he was rudely wrenched into manhood. He assumed the roles of surrogate father to his brothers and sisters while he held his own young family. And he also assumed the role of man of the house. The family moved to Cape Town from Grahamstown, and he had to hold us together and shepherd the younger ones through life in a new place. A heartfelt thanks for all the sacrifices, life lessons, camping out on beaches, long Sunday drives, insistence on education and reading good books, to seek wisdom and not knowledge, and all the wonders you brought to and showed us. Thanks for being able to talk and laugh together whenever I needed to, by simply picking up a cell phone. I have not yet realized how much I am going to miss you. You go to a place where I cannot now follow, to a dimension beyond mine, at one with the universe. I can now find you everywhere, especially always within me. You have helped to make me strong enough not to be afraid to cry, but to shamelessly shed a tear for your passing, to free my mind of sorrowful thoughts. My soul would have no rainbow if my eyes rained no tears for you. Go well, my brother. You are carried by our love. Forgive me. That one was heart-wrenching. Thank you, Uncle Tai. Now I'll read one. Excuse me. I'll read one from my Auntie Dolly and my father's sister, as well as her kids, Nicole and Claudia. Their message reads, "We don't know what to say, although we want to send a message. Whatever we say right now just won't be enough. Our loss is greater than any words can express. Love, Doll, Nicole, and Claudia." Thank you. Now I'll read one from my sister Jillian, as well as my cousin, whom we often see as our sister Michelle, who both could not make it as they are overseas. So first from Jillian, her one goes. The world is a lonely place. Dad, these words kept playing over and over again in my mind when I learned you had left us. As the family patriarch and our steady guiding hand, you were always there to lean on or ask advice from when life got rough. And I felt like the world had lost its color. I will miss our chats about everything and anything. Your quick texted updates on the delicious meals you were preparing for yourself and Carol, and on the progress of your bountiful herb garden, and you checking on me when you heard on the news of yet another hurricane or some crazy political news from this side of the world. I will always be thankful for those memories and hold them close to me whenever I miss you and grieve for you. You will live on in my heart and never grow old. And I will always be your jammy. I love you, Dad. Thank you, Jillian. And now I'll read one from my cousin Michelle, which will be my last one from the immediate family. Hi. Okay. Uncle P, the world is a different place without you in it. You had the noblest qualities of mind and heart, and you were always willing to share them. You were a gentle and provocative soul, and kind all at the same time, and a beacon for lifelong learning, be it music, gardening, politics, food, or family history. Rest in peace, Uncle P. Love, Michelle. Thank you. Now I'll call Tama up, who's going to read messages from close friends of the families. Please understand that there were literally hundreds of messages coming through on Dad's memorial page. And we appreciate each and every message that came through, and know that all of you are in spirit here today. Thank you. Tama?
Thanks, Grant. As Grant said, we've been completely overwhelmed and really deeply touched by all the many messages that have come through, remembering Patrick and expressing condolences to Carol, my mom, and to the family. So what I'm going to do is just read a selection, and they've been edited slightly to just give a feel of what people have been expressing and different aspects of Patrick's life, because as we know, he touched many, many people's lives in different ways, and we all knew a different part of him. So the first message that I'd like to read comes from Brian Ramadero, who says, Patrick has been a friend, a father, a boss, and mentor. In fact, a whole generation of young people from Soweto, from Katlehong, the Vaal, Dachakral, and Uppington were quite literally raised by him. The time I cherish most was when we worked in Dachakral in the early 1990s. We'd be up at 4, drive for hours to Dachakral, hold meetings with several community forums, and then drive for 4 hours again back to Joburg. And then we'd do it again in 3 or 4 days' time. During these long drives, we talked about our solutions to the youth crisis, to the education crisis, to the early childhood crisis, the unemployment crisis, you name it. I laugh now about how insanely optimistic we were, but this wasn't just idle talk. Patrick campaigned, he raised money, he initiated community-based projects on every single one of these issues. He was instrumental in forming one of the first early childhood development forums in Gauteng, adult education projects in Mpumalanga and Venda, youth cooperatives across Gauteng and Mpumalanga, and in raising scholarship funds for dozens of young people. I will miss his inspiring imagination, his energy and spirit. He was deeply disappointed and troubled by the abysmal state of our politics, but he never gave up on this country, and neither should we. And that was from Brian. Our next message is from Sophie Kusting, who says, Patrick, and family, we are with you in spirit in this difficult time. I remember how on one Children's Day in Joburg in the 1990s, a collective of different groups was trying to find unity and struggle. There was meant to be a short march to Joubert Park with children, and then a celebration of children in the park. One cold, high-felt winter's morning, it was initially just Patrick with 4 or 5 restless children, and myself, with a similar restless number. When the time for the march came, Patrick straightened his shoulders, put his smallest grandchild on his shoulders, and with 2 small ones linked to each of his hands, he resolutely started to march to the park. And we followed. I will never forget his striking spirit of caring, of sharing, of quiet and determined activism, and making the good happen irrespective of the never-ending difficulties. In the end, the day in Joubert Park was a big success for the children and can be celebrated for the beauty of many dedicated people working together. For me, the quiet hero of that day remains Patrick Chan. Hambakachli, Comrade Patrick, a luta continua. And that was from Sophie. I also would like to read 2 of the many, many messages that have come in for Carol from her dear friends, many of whom have known her since before she met Patrick. But I thought it would be fitting to read a message that captures how Carol and Patrick first got together. And it's a message from Norma, who says, I remember the heady days of their first love and their first date, riding in my bakkie to a jazz concert at Joubert Park with at least 5 other people from Worzabona, because Carol didn't want to make it too obvious that she was inviting Patrick on a date. I think often of the magic you worked in that little garden in Muizenberg, the smells, the colors, and the delicious produce. And I remember when you nearly clobbered me when Carol had a fall on our walk to St. James. I can't imagine returning to Muizenberg and not finding you there, steadfast as always. I'd also like to read a message from Marsha, who says, Patrick was one of life's beautiful people, so quiet and unassuming, but a man of deep conviction and a true stalwart. Patrick, your love and care for Carol was an inspiration for us all. I will so miss seeing the 2 of you in Muizenberg on our annual visit to Cape Town, enjoying your hospitality, the gentle, loving banter between you, and comparing garden notes with farmer Chan Sam. And lastly, I'd like to read a message from Carol's niece, my cousin Nicola Rabkin, on behalf of all the Rabkin family. And she says, Patrick has been a part of our family for almost 3 decades, and his story will be remembered for many years to come. His love and care and commitment will be deeply missed by all of us. His vision for a better world will be held by those left behind. May he rest peacefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Tama. That was moving. Unfortunately, we cannot read out all the messages, as there were literally hundreds of them. But we thank everybody for sending messages of support during this difficult time for both families. And I want to thank everybody who came here today, as well as Amos and Tama for helping me through this. As without them, we could have never achieved this. So now we're going to wrap up proceedings here, because the grieving process is kind of hard, and we all want to get on with it. So I'd like to send, we're going to have a small gathering at Lewis's place. If anybody feels like they want to come along, please do. Thank you.
everything